Once when I was working in an LTC facility, I was walking down the hall speaking to a fellow worker when all of a sudden, we heard the loud sound of water running in the bathroom. All the patients were in bed already, so I turned to her and looked like, "What is that?" We walked to the bathroom, which you could only enter by key, unlocked the door, and went in. The lights were out, so we turned them on. The tub water was running full blast into the tub. No one was in there. I walked over and turned the faucet all the way until the water stopped running. I said, "Why is this water running? Everyone's in bed." My colleague said, "Strange stuff happens in that bathroom and on the floor all the time, including lights turning on and off and stuff moving around or turning on in that particular bathroom." What's weird was I heard the water turn on as I was standing near that bathroom, and no one walked in, and the handle had to be turned all the way to the right to turn it off. I am a psychiatric nurse, and early in my career, I worked at a residential mental health facility. One of our residents was an elective mute, which means that he couldn't talk, but there were no medical reasons as to why. He had spoken earlier in his life and in fact seemed quite normal back then, with the exception of being close to 7 feet tall. He had been raised in the Deep South and joined the military when he was 19, but one night he vanished. He was declared AWOL, meaning absent without leave, and eventually he was declared missing and dead. 10 years later, a 7-foot-tall man walked into a VA hospital emergency room in my part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is Marion Duchesne, not the real name, and I've been dead for 10 years. Those were the last words he ever spoke. He was covered with dust and blood. Although he faked his name, he was wearing the same clothes he had been reported to be wearing the night he vanished. His social security number had not been used and he had no identification on his person. However, they were able to identify him, I guess via fingerprints. The family was notified, but they said they had already grieved their lost man and that whomever was claiming to be him simply could not be. They demanded not to be contacted again. Marion paced all day every day, moving his mouth that looked like talking or muttering, but no sound came out. He had an unnerving habit of throwing his head back, with his mouth wide open as if he were laughing heartily, but not even a breath could be heard. If I talked to him, he appeared to listen, periodically throwing his head back in that laughter-mimicking way of his. Various medications were tried, but they did not affect him either positively or negatively. Occupational therapy did nothing because Marion would just grin, and unless told to stay put, he'd get up and start pacing again. On my last day at that job, the last thing I saw was Marion pacing in the parking lot, throwing his head back to laugh. Later I wondered if all along I'd been dealing with a ghost. All these years later, I still don't know. I worked as a forensic nurse in a hospital's lockup unit. We had one older lady who swore she was being haunted and abused by a demon she would call Tiberius. So many crazy things happened while she was on the unit. We would go into the room, do normal care, and leave. Seconds later she'd start screaming bloody murder. We would run into the room to find her looking like she had been in a fight with a boxing champ. Bloody lip, black eye, markings all over her body. No one ever saw her doing this stuff to herself. things would get moved around the room by themselves. At one point, she was in protective restraints because the doctor thought she was hurting herself. There was no way she could have moved or done anything to herself while in these restraints, but new marks would always appear or her belongings would be across the room. The room was secure, so there was no way someone else was doing this. When we asked her questions, she would just say it was Tiberius. After she was discharged, we always had trouble with that room. If there was going to be a rapid response or code, it happened in that room. One night, a guard reported lights blinking on and off. It was that room.